Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And guys, please like and subscribe. If you do like what you're listening to, please inform your friends and family. It is imperative that we get back to learning finances and understand how the world really works. Because once we understand how the world really works, we know that everything is planned. Now guys, of course, I normally give you a video to make you think about another subject other than crypto. But guys, we're going to stick on crypto, because this video is definitely going to make you think. Now, guys, this is basically going to be about Coinbase. Remember earlier in the week, basically we were notified, hey, Coinbase is going public. Went over Mark Andreessen, the hand in Coinbase. Now, finding out Coinbase, of course, last week we found out that, of course, Coinbase was going to be doing dealings with the IRS, the DEA. Now we're finding out that they have a contract in May of 2020 with Department of Homeland Security. So basically we have Coinbase, of course, dealing with, of course, the CIA. But we're going to get a little deeper than that, because we're going to do the connection. Because all these companies, like I stated, guys, I always state this, they're all connected. Now, if we go to Greg Kidd and David Schwartz with Ripple, they both work for the NSA. Now also, Greg Kidd was working for Booz Allen, who was working for Booz Allen, Edward Snowden. So we see these same figures inside of the financial sector. Now, another video that I went over was the Federal Reserve 2.0 with JP Morgan. And guys, please go back and watch that video, because we have Gavin Andreessen, who's not related to Mark Andreessen. But the fact is, of course, he did, Zcash, which uses Zsnarks. And of course, JP Morgan, Microsoft is going to be using that software on their, of course, blockchain, their Azure, and then also, of course, JP Morgan's Quorum. But the fact is that Gavin was offered, a few $1,000s to work for the CIA, work with the CIA as far as the software was concerned. Now, the fact is that the Department of Homeland Security, the contract is not much as $183,000, but when you're talking about, hundreds of millions of billions of people are getting, online, then of course, that contract can be hundreds of millions of dollars. But guys, why do they want all this security information? And what do I tell you? I go right back to what? China. They want all this information so that basically they can transfer it over to China. Now, basically, we also had Fred, who basically became the CEO of Coinbase, who was working for who? Goldman Sachs. So, and then also in the article, we have Ripple's Chris Larson going to be, donating cameras as far as all over San Francisco for security. Is that for security, or is that the testing ground for what? Same as China, with all these security cameras being Big Brother, the eye, the all-seeing eye. And we see this, guys. I just want to make sure that we're opening our eyes up to this big factor. Now, we also, don't forget, we had Coinbase with Neutrino in 2019, but of course they said they, got rid of the staff, but of course they kept the software. We know this. So guys, we have to understand one thing, is that this current system that we're in, they want to make sure it's tight, no loopholes, so therefore no one can get around the system. That's all this is about. The fact is that, like I stated, I went over JP Morgan's 2.0 in the video, that they're building the same exact system that we have right now. This old platform over to this new blockchain crypto system. But they can't afford no loopholes. That's why they bring in the IRS. That's why they bring in the DEA. That's why they're bringing in Homeland Security, CIA. That's why they're bringing in all these forces. And we know the power of three: IRS, CIA, FBI. We know the power of three, guys. You have to understand this. I know some of it goes over people's heads, but those who've been watching my channel understand that, guys, this is a system. And when you understand that you're in a system, you step aside. Because the masses, believe me, when I tell you that it's nothing going to be but control in America, just like I said, it's only going to be a few hundred million, but it's going to be controlled from China, like I stated in my book. Guys, this is all in my book way before this is happening. But guys, you have to make sure that you are connecting the dots, because I understand that everybody wants to get in. This is going to be a 5-10 year plan. No, guys, 5-10 years, you're going to have one of those bracelets on yourself along with Amazon, and they buzzing you back to work. This is not no 5-10 year plan. This is a 1 to 3 year plan. Once they get this up and running, the money, you grab your money, you get out. Because I'm telling you, they're going to use this the same way they did the stock market. They pump and dump, where they get you out the way. Majority of these cryptos don't have to have a value. They can be free. So that's the reason why they're going to be airdropping. I went over that video with Brian Armstrong the other day. They can just airdrop this money. So that's all this is going to be about. But guys, I just want to make sure that you are conscious of the avenue that we're going. The government is putting the crypto market on lockdown. Plain and simple. So the fact is that get your money before the masses come in. Get your money while the masses come in. You walking out with a bag full of money. You're happy. You're taking care of your friends and family. That's what it's about. But guys, that's all I have for you. Y'all have a wonderful day. Don't forget about the book, the NWO book, The Cryptoteacher, Come Into Consciousness.
Awesome. Greg? How about my money?
Is this on? So there's cultural differences about this. Obviously, China has a view that puts the interests of the state above the interests of the individual. In the US, the view of privacy has been that it's a contract right. And as we all know, signing so many terms of use, you can sign that contract right away. And so the Europeans take a different view. They view privacy as a human right, not something you can sign away just as a contract right. Unless there's a change in the US to a more human rights view of privacy as opposed to just a contract right, I don't see a lot of progress coming from the US or from China. Unfortunately, the situation in Europe is, while they do think of it as a human right, their approach for legislating has been a very bureaucratic GDPR, which creates a very complex privacy management regime for individuals, and even individuals who care a lot about privacy, and I'd include myself, we don't want to have the burden of managing hundreds or thousands of sharing of private details. There needs to be a way where you minimize the exposure of your private information, because with zero knowledge proofs, we shouldn't have to give up that information in the first place. We should just be able to give up attested to proofs about our age, about our residency, without necessarily giving up what our age is.
So what will Greg, in your mind, the ideal world look like? So obviously my identity and my data is all over the place and owned by so many various different internet giants and just sort of out there already. To get to the point where I'm giving permission to different people to access to my data, like what are some of the steps that need to be taken to get there?
So I'm a big fan of what happened to the internet when it went from being for universities and governments to individuals and businesses. The thing that made that possible, going back to the Tim Berners-Lee day, was the World Wide Web. What made the World Wide Web possible was there was a global domain name system, and you didn't have to care about all the gobbledygook of IP addresses underneath. There was one namespace for the entire world, not a Brazilian, not a Chinese. We need something like that for identity. It would be both a right and a responsibility for everyone to have a name. You could have more than one name, but no two people could have the same name. And that would be a public good. It would be a public registry. But what is on that public registry wouldn't be private information. It would simply be public attestations about your private information. And that should be enough for you to open accounts and to have permission to act.
Got it. And you guys mentioned earlier about sort of, I knew like David in the backstage, we were talking about in the last couple of years, particular for anchor free, you're seeing huge increase in terms of your install for US, which is not the case in the past. I'd love to hear both of your thoughts in terms of by geography or certain countries. What are some of the regulatory or movement that's actually sort of changed like your business or how you planning about all that?
I think it's less about regulatory. It's more about just the fact that we've had so many high-profile security breaches over the last few years. Equifax, Yahoo getting hacked. All the big retailers have been hacked from Target to like everyone else. And people are starting to wake up and say, look, our security is important to us. Our data is important to us. And then you see things like Facebook, which, everybody's concerned about Facebook selling our data. Facebook actually doesn't sell data because data is their currency. Like they want to collect as much data as possible. But what Facebook does is they buy data. And for example, like so many people may have their phone lying in front of them on the table and like 5 minutes later they see an ad. I mean, how many people here have seen that? Where you see an ad for what you were just talking about on Facebook. And Facebook says categorically, we do not listen to the microphone. And that's probably true. But what happens is there's a bunch of other companies that are listening, and then they sell that data to Facebook. And so Facebook isn't listening, but they're buying the data, right? And so that's a real problem. And I think consumers are starting to understand that. You go to WebMD, you do a search around something related to healthcare, and a day later you see an ad about that on Facebook. And so I think consumers, between the privacy threats from companies like Facebook and security breaches, people are waking up and they're saying, look, this stuff is important to us. And maybe the regulators will do something like in Europe. Maybe there'll be a GDPR type of thing in the US. Or maybe there will be solutions in the private sector that will just come out that will address these issues. And I'll tell you, like net neutrality, for example, the idea that all content online should be equally available at the same speed, as you know, was repealed in the US a few years ago. And we looked at that and we said, fine, we'll just release an SDK, a software development kit, that any app developer can integrate that will just preserve net neutrality. It will hide their traffic from the ISP. And so I think that probably there will be a lot of solutions coming out from the private sector around privacy and security. And today, hundreds of thousands of people in the US every day are downloading privacy products, every day. This was not the case a few years ago.
Yeah.
So the only thing I would add is I'm an ex-regulator myself. I'm from the Fed, worked at the payments group, at the board. There does need to be information available on a need-to-know basis for security, whether it's for terrorism, money laundering, et cetera. But I want to divide data that's available for a need-to-know basis, for a compliance, law enforcement purpose, from the troves of data that are available on a want-to-know basis. And the want-to-know basis is the world that drives the ad-based insanity that we live with today, all these use cases. It's possible to divide those two sets of data. You're going to need some regulatory help to do it, but we should think about a world where the amount of information that's available for you in the want-to-know basis is minimized. We don't need to live in an ad-based world. And I will give Mark Zuckerberg credit. He has realized that given the bad press and the bad rap that they've gotten for what's happened with privacy degradation at Facebook, that he sees that the future is not based around an ad-based reality. So I will give him credit. I do believe he's sincere. He will pivot the company. He will move to a different way of them handling data, whether they can still have enough trust versus the laziness and convenience people will flock to. That's a big question that remains to be seen.